comfortable there. The windowsill sometimes works too. Whatever you do, good.
Unless it's cold air blowing, it might not
This is
be.
the highest price seat.
Yeah, right.
Well, it might be the hot seat, I don't know.
Or the hot seat, yeah.
You just show it. Camera on. It's on.
It's coming. Says it's live.
No.
Okay, here we are. We're back again to our Senate Transportation Committee. Reconvening. Our next item this morning is the Vermont Towing Association. And so they have some issues that I can discuss with this committee. So who would like to go first for the Towing Association? Yes, so why don't you join us here at the table? Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
And Chair, I'd like to just add a word or two. So last year we had the towers and we had amended the miscellaneous bill, and we pretty much had everything squared away, I think, where everybody was happy, and the miscellaneous bill was held up by the House. So they were trying to propose some things that we weren't in favor of, and so we didn't pass that bill.
Oh, we didn't.
And so the towers are back in today to refresh
Okay.
with what their asks are. Maybe
This
a
looks like
few,
Vince is writing.
maybe a few additional asks. I think there might be some of Vince's writing in there as well.
It's not in red.
Well, I also included,
He just commented on that, he says, I used to write these all in red, but it drives people nuts.
I also included Senator Kitchell.
And I used to have him on my committee.
How do you do? He was my boss.
So Anthea did some outtakes on it as well, on some emails on this one right here. So, and then Mike should have shared that with you as well.
Senator Aluzzi used to write legislation better than any draft person.
On his way up,
On his
it's
way up.
there.
Yeah, he could write it while he's driving a car. Okay, all right. Welcome this morning and thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Bob Momini. I'm the chairman of the Vermont Tow Association. As Senator Ingalls had mentioned, we had asked last year for some changes to the abandonment law, which were, I guess, put in and all approved. However, the bill did not pass. So we're looking to have that looked at again and reintroduced, but with some amendments or changes that we
Sure.
did.
Why don't you take
So-
us through those?
Yeah, so page 34 is where it starts. Some of the issues we're having right now.
34, where are we?
This is on your,
Miscellaneous bill, our current this year.
Must be on this one
It's on
right here, the
this-
one we started closing out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's on the DMV bill. Okay. Okay.
Miscellaneous
Yeah, I
CMP.
got you now. Just give us a second.
Give us a second, we'll get there.
Towing amended, yes, page 34.
834, 834, 13, 27.
Yeah. I get it.
Do you have it, Senator Monk, on this one?
No,
You got
yes.
it, yeah.
Okay.
34, page 35, here 34. Okay, here we go. Abandoned vehicles, all right, we got it. So we're all on the same page.
This is
All right.
last year's language.
most of it, yeah, some of it was left out. But I can go over that. I don't want, that's on the next page, but I don't still want to jump
We
for.
also have with us morning Mike Smith, the Deputy Commissioner of DMV, to sit in on the.
Absolutely, yeah.
He can find out what's going on here, so. Okay, why don't you tell us what's going on?
So some issues that we're running into now, as we had talked last year with abandoned motor vehicles, it has come in the past few years, there's been change in motor vehicles, and they're not doing anything they shouldn't, they're just following the law as it was written. And some of the issues we're having is on line 9, or let's start on line 8, motor vehicle that has been remained on public or private property or along a highway for more than 48 hours with the consent of the owner or person.
Without the consent.
Without the consent of the owner or person in control of the property, and has a valid registration plate or public identification number and has not been removed, destroyed, or altered. So this is running into some issues with a car that's left on the side of the road for whatever reason, maybe it was broke down, or a DWI arrest, or a motor vehicle infraction of some sort, or an accident, if it hasn't been left there 48 hours, it is not defined as a abandoned motor vehicle for reimbursement to towers. Is that correct?
So it has to be there 2 days?
It has to be there 2 days.
Wow.
So obviously, police are calling us within an hour
Get rid of this car.
to get rid of this car.
On the, on the interstate also, they,
Sure, yeah, according to the definition, it has to be there 48 hours.
yeah, all right,
So, I mean, our roads are gonna be littered
yeah, all right.
with vehicles, so towers have the eligibility to be reimbursed currently $40. That's
$40 to go pick up the car?
correct, and tow it back, and file for abandonment, and dispose of the vehicle,
Oh my God.
which we've asked to have that raised to $125.
At least, I would think.
Correct, which we thought was a fair, at least it's better, I've been towing 16 years, I think, and that $40 was in there when I
Oh
started.
my God, $40 can
However,
start your truck.
no one's ever gotten the $40 in the time that I've known, except for last week. One of the towers finally got the $40 check. Rather than cash it, it's been framed. So,
Where does it come from, the $40?
It would be,
and
is it signed by?
so
police?
one has been issued. It was just brought in the lunchroom. We were going over the bill as it is written in the law currently, and there is a subsection to this abandonment, and it reads as a motor vehicle that has been remained on public or private property or along a highway without the consent of owner or person in control of the property for any period of time, if the vehicle does not have a valid registration or the public identification number has been removed, destroyed, or altered. So there is a subsection in there that I think DMV might be misreading that, but if you go by what that says, if the car has a valid VIN, valid registration, you gotta go to 48 hours. If it does not have a valid registration or a valid VIN, you then it's classified as abandoned immediately. So there is a loophole there. However, most of these vehicles that are picking up that are in accidents or arrests or motor vehicle infractions are valid vehicles.
How's that handle, I'm jumping in here, but how's that handle when the vehicle's there and who they call as a tower? They just.
Well, the state police have a list and they rotate.
Yeah.
So then you have to respond to that.
So that's an issue we're just starting to get into maybe for next year or something. But
Okay.
there is a rotation list by county for state police, and in each county there are different zones. So I think in Caledonia County, there's 9 zones, Derby, there's 7 zones.
Okay.
So each zone is a rotation. And you as a tower sign up for that zone,
Okay.
and you're in a list. So if there was 3 of us, and I'm first, all right, I get the first one, you get the second one, you get the third one, then it comes back. If I say no, I get put to the bottom of the list, and now it's your call.
It's not the closest towing company.
It is not. But what's happening now is because of the issue of not getting reimbursed for abandoned motor vehicles.
Right.
And also what I'm gonna get to next is the time constraint that's been put on towers. If it comes in as it's a 1994 Chevy Cavalier, most towers are being like, I don't have anybody to take the call because they don't want to be stuck with it. $40 isn't enough money to cover their costs.
All right.
So now it goes to you, and you either take it or don't. And sometimes it's just this vicious circle. So Senator Kitchell, who keeps accepting the calls, she's getting stuck with all the,
Okay.
Yeah. My first car was a 92 Cavalier and I miss it fondly. So if you got it, you let me know.
Bring it back. Bring it back.
Come on down, we can come shopping at my place, got all sorts of colors.
If you get a Corvette, let me know. Okay.
The other,
Sounds like a Dixie cup. You use it once and throw it away. I bet.
Go ahead.
Flash.
the other issue in that category is burned motor vehicles. So if a car catches on fire and the VIN is destroyed, technically with a VIN verification, you're supposed to have 2 spots to verify the VIN, whether that's the door frame and the dash pillar or the glove box or somewhere on the vehicle on the firewall or frame. But obviously if they're in a fire, you can't always verify 2 VINs. So that is proposing a issue because now we're getting these vehicles that have been burned, can't verify the VIN. Technically, we're
Is
supposed to be able,
that here in our language?
I think,
Is that in the
I think-
statute that you need the two?
if you look at the, this is under issue number 2, it's the second page. No, we didn't put it in there. That was one we didn't add in there. It was on mine, but.
Okay, you can cover that.
What about burned motor vehicles? So people are getting stuck with the motor vehicle because it is, we can't verify the VIN number. DMV, from what my understanding is, has a, if the police cannot verify the VIN, we are to call DMV and they send out a special field agent inspector to come over and verify it. However, they've got a lot of things going on, right? So to get one out to us is near impossible. And when they do come out and can't find it, it's like, can't find the VIN. And we're still stuck with the vehicle, so we can't sell it, scrap it.
So the requirement for 2, is that in statute or is that one of your administrative, is that a regulation or a procedure? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think it's federal.
Do you think it's,
I think it's a federal motor vehicle requirement that there be multiple VINs on a car.
no, but that you have to have 2, and like in the case of the burned car? Is that something that we have to do because of the federal rule, because it's state law that we could change? Or it's not law, but it's a DMV regulation? I'm just trying to go through the,
Yeah, I think your position is you can't find a VIN, correct?
Correct, but in Vermont, DMV's motor vehicles position is, in order to do a successful VIN verification, they want 2 positive VIN identifications.
And the answer to your question is it's policy. But
rather than state law?
correct.
Okay,
So it's just your the department's policy.
I believe, and I need to research that.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything in writing that says statute form. It has to be 2, but I don't know.
that's what I'm trying to figure out, is whether we've got a law that has that 2
Yeah.
verification mandate, or whether it's something that the department is doing as an administrative practice, which then doesn't require statute change, but Mike's gonna have to check on that.
So what do you do with these vehicles after? I mean, you must have them stacked up someplace.
We do. And that proposes another issue to most towns. We have a few members of the association, I'm sure there's a few that are not, that get into zoning trouble because I know like our Lindenville location, we're technically, I think, 10 or 15 vehicles at one time, and they can only stay within a 90-day period. So now we've got these vehicles accumulating and, you put trees around them so that people don't see them.
You can't get rid of them or crush them or something.
So a reputable scrapyard will not take a vehicle that does not have, you do not have ownership. So he couldn't bring my vehicle without a title or a bill of sale from the state saying that you legally own this vehicle now to dispose of
It had a good catalytic converter on it.
it. And that's the other issue. Now, we used to be able to cut the Cadillac converters up to get some sort of compensation, but generally speaking, somebody else has already gotten it before we have. So, and scrap prices today are horrible. So there's no real value. And I think one of our members from Ray's Auto testified last year, and he had brought, I think, 7 vehicles to scrap and got like $380 for 7 vehicles.
Wow.
So he had towed it once, filed for all the abandonment, towed it a second time to the scrapyard for a nominal amount of money.
And before we move on, why isn't the $40 coming back?
So we did the review. There's actually been 2 checks that have been issued, and they're the only 2 that actually complied with the statutory requirements.
Okay, so there's something lacking between the statutory requirements and what.
The interesting part is there's a box in the form that says, I would like my $40 refunded. Everybody checks it. And then there's certain requirements that go along with that. I was trying to look it up on my phone because I didn't bring the actual type through, but I think it's going to be told from public property. And it has to be requested, I believe, by law enforcement. So those 2 things haven't happened, that doesn't qualify in the letter of the statute.
So I just asked our office, we had this happen yesterday. It was a vehicle that was towed from an accident. The plate did not match the VIN number. So it was an illegal plate. We did not get the $40. We could have a rejection letter. I'm having them send that over to me. My manager, who didn't know we were talking about this, called the state and the lady said, yeah, it did not meet the requirement because it was not left on the road for 48 hours. So he called me and he's like, can you believe this? So I said, yeah, we're arguing that right now. However, in the lunchroom, section B, that car actually fell under section B because it did not have a valid registration plate and matching VIN. So technically under subsection 2, line 13 on that, it would have met the abandoned motor vehicle. So I don't know if in motor vehicle there's, because I did it myself, I read that first paragraph and I'm like, oh, it's gonna wait 48 hours, but subsection 2 says, if it does not have a valid registration, then it meets abandonment.
But then again, you only argue, I mean, it's only $40.
It's only $40,
I mean,
right, and it's,
That's ridiculous in today's world.
Correct.
$40, you can't.
It's nothing.
you know, Buy 2 packs of cigarettes.
so, right, right. So we'd like to have that increase to 125 is what we propose, and I think there's somewhere it's written down, but
And that $40 is in statute or is that?
it's not on your packet here, however,
It must have been there 100 years.
it's,
It's in the law, $40.
Wow.
so on average, I had some statistics from Mike Southworth at Motor Vehicles, and they're doing, don't quote me, but 700 to 800 abandoned vehicles a year. So if every one of them got $40, $16,200 of DMV's budget goes towards this $40. So if you did the math, there's not even enough money in DMV's budget to pay the $40 if every one of them was issued. However, this year we've fortunate to have gotten 2, so $80 of the 16,200 is now.
God, in today's world, that's not even, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, so is that your understanding of the Romanet 2, that's subsection 2, that like this example that was just given should have been $40 or?
That's a hard one to answer because Vermont law, section 321 allows for the transfer of license plates. So the transfer, it could have been in that transfer period. And I'm saying put up to that no data to look at, but you're legal for 60 days, swap in one plate from another vehicle that you sold onto this vehicle, you're now legal for 60 full days. So that could, I don't have the answer to that.
But if it was an illegal plate, then it would have been.
Technically, it's an unregistered vehicle at that point.
A registration plate is the same as a license plate.
Yes.
So that's why we would like to ideally strike the 48 hours or at least reduce it
Something shorter, yeah.
way down.
I definitely agree with $125, and then the 48 hours, I just wondered, is that regardless of where, I know you said any on the side of the road, but if somebody gets to a pull-off and if it's not in the actual right across the white line or even on the shoulder, you would still want that to be able to take that within a day? I'm just thinking of that person that might be trying to work to go pick
What
up
happens
their
if a
car.
plow truck comes through, a plow truck, they'd have to go around it. That would lock up.
But isn't this all triggered when the state police call you?
Yes.
So-
So towers are not driving up and down the road and they're like, oh,
So-
there's a car, like
So,
That's not
and maybe that's what we have, you know, that in fact is being removed at the request of Vermont State Police.
Right.
Maybe that's the triggering
Right.
way of addressing this.
48 hours or by request.
Yeah,
Law
Law enforcement.
In our amendments, we added that actual, almost the verbatim.
Oh, you
language
did?
that you
I
just
haven't
said.
read it yet.
Yeah, it's hard to
It's
read.
issue
It'd
number.
be easier to read if it was in red.
Yeah, I know.
I really did think about putting it red, but I thought Jane would, if she saw it.
I don't see it.
Would it have to be Vermont State Police or law enforcement?
So we were asking to have that changed as
Because it
well.
could be the sheriff, for example, or,
Law enforcement.
and also DMV has their own
Truck
trucks.
unit.
Yeah, they got 22 trucks.
Well, we added law enforcement, which includes the inspectors who are certified law enforcement officers. We also added fire and rescue because sometimes they need to have vehicles moved.
Right.
So I think we covered it in one of the amendments. I don't happen to have a
I know.
copy in front of me.
Here,
At the bottom of section issue number 2, it says add a motor vehicle towed or recovered at the request of state or any political subdivision
Got it.
or agent thereof, including a fire district, emergency medical services, or designated fire emergency medical service entity.
And the reason it's so expensive is Russ knows in Orleans and maybe other counties, a lot of towns don't have their own fire department. They have a designated fire department.
Right.
Like in Westmore, it's a nonprofit. I don't know if Colchester's the same way. So that's why we tried to be as expansive as we could. If you're trying to get a fire truck, you know, and they say tow it, if they tow it, and right now the law doesn't cover that eventuality.
How about border patrol? Because we get calls from border patrol to move vehicles sometimes
No, they're
because
law
we're
enforcement.
so close to the border.
That would, I think, be covered under the political estate or political subdivision or agent thereof is what we were trying to cover. Is
Yeah, they'd have to have.
somebody of legal authority, I think is,
Or they would be law enforcement.
They would be, I think, border.
Go ahead.
So with this, with law enforcement, it would be like some neighbor that sees a car, they can't just call you all to have it towed. They'd have to call the cops and the cops would have to determine, yes, we need to get it out of the roadway. I like that.
Yeah,
That's-
you'd have to-
Seems like it's a lot cleaner. Sometimes you'll find, you can have your car break down and their tickets, they've got the little pink, whatever they do, they ticket them. Is that to indicate the time?
the orange sticker on the back window, I
Yeah.
believe they put that the police have been advised and notified and that the
But
customer
they don't
was
wouldn't
given.
ordinarily call you immediately then.
No, you know, unless it poses a safety hazard to the motoring public, I don't think that they would. They put the sticker on there and I think they give them a time frame.
Mike, you,
Does that happen to you?
I should have kept it there. I just remember.
he's still looking for it.
I remember calling my cousin, and it took me a day or so, and I was just having my cousin pick it up, but I should have put a note out saying I'm gonna get this out of here, so.
And there should be some responsibility on the customer to call state police, and say, hey, I just broke down, I left my car in the pull off. Give me a couple hours, I'm gonna get somebody to get here to get it out. You know?
So Mike, so far, the conversation, are you in agreement with what's happening here? Tell us what your opinion
Vince, you're looking like you're.
I know. I like that.
It's legal.
You're kind of listing.
Thank God you brought
Right.
it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna listen to Mike for a moment. Yes, Mike, tell us what your thoughts are.
So I hear the concerns that, you know, and clearly we are all right with the moving of the 30 to the 90 days, which is actually on the next page, which really hasn't been discussed. I don't know how to relate or weigh in on the vehicle that you discussed, because I don't have the ability to do the research, but that's definitely something that would play into all of this because it is a transfer law. So this can't be the first time it's come up, right? And you know, so clearly there's gonna be some way to handle that, because that's all the difference between doing it now and doing 48 hours.
Right.
I don't have a good solution for that.
Well, but you would be open to eliminating that 48 hours and just say being towed at the request of,
I think that makes sense, yes.
seems like it would make more sense.
It just, I don't know why something doesn't feel right.
Well, don't agree to it until it feels right.
Well, I know, you know, and I guess I'm just thinking 48 hours, so, you know, your Cavalier broke down on the side of the interstate, so that 48 hours is the difference between your vehicle starting down an abandoned vehicle path and not starting down an abandoned vehicle path, because you might have come back and got it. So,
That takes time.
correct, so I don't know what a good solution is for that.
So I'm just gonna use you. So if his car he breaks down and state police call a tower to tow it, they tow it, right? Nobody wants your Cavalier, I promise, right?
Except for
We then have to wait, I believe it is also 48 hours to file for abandonment. So let's say you don't come in 2 days. Wouldn't you say, hey, where's my car? Right? Call state police, hey, where's my car? Oh, we had, you know, Mitsubishi tow it. At that point, we file for abandonment. We have to get the police, which is coming up. We have to get the police to come and do a VIN verification. We then submit the paperwork to DMV. So what would you say that would be almost a week probably if we were on the ball, right? At that point, the tower cannot charge you storage for towing the vehicle until the letter has been sent to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So essentially you're getting a free week's worth of storage. At that point, when the state gets the paperwork, they process it on their end, mail you a certified letter. They also do phone calls lately. So you're having an opportunity to get your vehicle back.
So I'm generally okay with moving this forward. I just trust that law enforcement judgment, I would hope, would be that if I find somebody and push it off to be out of the way so that I can go and figure things out, that they're not just gonna, get it towed to the other side of the state, causing me even more grief and time.
Correct.
But there's no place that you're on an interstate or highway, you can't leave it. There's no place to push it off the road unless you have a tow truck. That's what you gotta have, yes.
You need AAA. With your Cavalier, I don't abandon it.
We don't know what happened to the Cavalier.
Behind one of Bob's trees.
So what can you charge the car owner? So if you can't charge for storage, you charge for the towing. So for the Cavalier example, they were like, we're not picking up. But if they said it was a 2022 Jaguar, you're like, okay, I'll come pick it up because you're more likely that the owner is interested in coming and getting it and has the funds to pay for something.
Right, so towers can charge their tow rates, and every tower is different. My overhead is different than.
That's like a per mile charge.
Right, it's probably usually a hook fee and a per mile charge. Some people have, a gate fee if you want to come after hours and get it to charge you to pay somebody to come in and release.
That's how you hope to make your money for going out to pick up the vehicle.
Correct.
They pay those tow charges.
Right,
So the payment of the $40 is only if the owner of the car
hasn't come and get it.
doesn't come and get it, and,
So I think the state, how it reads is the state is looking at it as an abandoned motor vehicle is a vehicle that was left on the side of the road. If you were in an accident with your Cavalier that's worth nothing and it was just totaled, and you leave it with the tower, in our eyes, that's still abandoning your vehicle. According to motor vehicles, it has to be abandoned on the side of the road. So if we get rid of that, it would allow the consumer who abandoned the vehicle.
How many abandoned vehicles do we have a year? So
Roughly 800, I have the exact numbers up till last year.
So it's a way of, because otherwise you have to dispose of, you have to pay somebody to take it to a salvage and get the $100.
Yeah, so if it was worth anything, you could sell it, you could scrap it, or we send a lot of them to fire departments for training, that they'll cut them up,
Yeah,
for the JAWS training and stuff.
It's a real problem in Burlington. I know that the cars just get dropped because if you imagine when you're those financial circumstances where you've got a car that you're driving into the ground, to properly get rid of it when it's worth nothing can cost you a day's work, 2 days work. You got to figure, you got to tow it somewhere. So people abandon, beat up old cars.
Oh, we're selling 100, we just heard earlier, we're new registrations, 100,000 vehicles a year. If you got 800 of them, it's a small percentage, but it's a big number to be littered alongside the roadside for sure.
so, when you take the 800 and look at the number of companies that are actually providing that service,
Oh, yeah,
the
then
impact is much greater.
Well, then you take the percentage of what they can't get rid of and they start stacking them up. It doesn't take very long to.
$40 in itself. $40.
Yeah.
At diesel fuel, $7 a gallon.
Well, it's sort of a public service. and
I guess so. They're coming out of their pocket.
Yeah, you should get a gold star.
Or a tax deduction for unreimbursed costs. Mhm.
And
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
if you think of that, there's no other agency that I can think of that goes out at a moment's notice in all hours of the night to clean up the Vermont roadways
Right.
without knowing that they're gonna get paid. There's no tree service cleaning up tree limbs, there's no garbage company picking up garbage, there's nobody mowing the lawn for free. So we rely on vehicles that we do get paid on, that have insurance, that we can get a reimbursement for the state for at least doing our part in the.
Yeah, you don't know if it's gonna be midnight or Sunday morning or Christmas Day or whatever.
It's usually Sunday at 5,
You know.
Friday at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's not a very convenient time.
Right.
So, what else would we cover?
Page, so increasing, so right now we have 30 days to file,
What page in line?
35
Oh, but
line,
that's what Mike said, DMV would agree to the 90 days.
Yes.
That's-
page 35, line 11.
Bob, do we have an extra one of them?
I think this, I'm using his, but
Why don't you just use the amendments to go through this? You're working off a bill from last year. They got this year.
No, this-
this is theirs.
You got it? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, no worries, I'm all set.
On line 11, it says, response by the department within 30 days, we're asking for 90 days after the date of the vehicle being discovered. So historically, this was never an issue. However, in the last several years, we've been held to the 30 days. So which isn't the end of the world in the summertime when you've got, not as busy, but in the winter time when you have a tow company, and there are a lot of them that have, one person running that tow truck, they're trying to maintain their business, keep their business running. And now they have 30 days to fill out the state's paperwork, hire the police department to come and do a VIN verification, submit all the paperwork, and if it gets there on the 31st day, they are no longer eligible for abandonment.
So the draft that we have actually updates to 90 days.
90 days,
Right.
so we're good with that.
And you support that, obviously.
Yes.
I think that might have been in last year.
It was, yeah, that was the whole start of it.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike, can you explain why, or why we would have a deadline? Like, why not? If somebody's gonna drop off a car on my property, why would I have to do it in 30 days?
I have no good answer to that. I believe the statute may have been created before it was born.
I think this is like, why have 90 days? Why is it that you have to file it at a certain amount of time? Like,
I think it got moved to 90 because 30 was in there and they were looking for extra time. I have no
why
explanation.
not have it, why at any time? Like, why have a date at all?
So, this is the explanation I got from motor vehicles was there needs to be some sort of time frame for, Senator Kitchell's car breaks down and I wait 6 months. She has no idea where her car is, which if my car was missing, I would certainly make some reasonable efforts to find where it is. But let's say I wait 6 months and I don't file for it, so she's without a car for 6 months. So some sort of consumer protection. However, we cannot charge you storage.
So like, if somebody stole their car and dumped it on a farm and you would want it to beat them to file, the farm to file within 30 days so they could find out that the car is there. Is that what you're saying?
Not I, that was the explanation I got.
Right,
from
well, that's the
motor vehicles.
explanation,
Yeah.
not the
But I
explanation.
think there should be a timeline, a reasonable timeline to keep the process moving. And I don't think I think, I don't know what day it is, but I don't know what the days are, but it sounds like everybody's agreed to the 90 days, but I think it just keeps the process going.
And that was exactly it, they wanted a time frame, and I think we had originally asked for 120 days. I was like, all right, let's compromise here to 90. However, I can't charge, if I wait till the 89th day to send this letter to DMV, I cannot charge storage for 89 days. I can only charge 90 days, start storage day 1.
So it's up to you really to get it done quicker.
Right, so there's no monetary advantage to this to a tower to wait 90 days. This is just giving them time frame to be able to submit paperwork, file, and get the title back so they can dispose of the vehicle, scrap it, sell it, donate it.
So the landowner,
Right.
in this case, is really the towing company, as opposed to somebody,
That's how I was reading, as like a farmer.
as opposed to, you break down and you leave your vehicle.
Because like a
on
class
property.
4 road or, some logging road, somebody just drives it in there and parks it. I might not even know it's there for, 90 days. But so I was reading landowner, but you're using this as a towing company. Like, they're abandoning it basically on
Most,
your lot. after you tow
I'm
it.
not sure how the consumer abandonment works. I'm assuming it works the same way. However, I can't think of, I shouldn't say that. We get calls all the time. There's a car in my yard. Can you come tow it? No. Because I don't know why it's there. I'm not getting involved in the
But they
legal.
could, but if somebody abandons a vehicle on my car, if I do it within 30 or 90 days, I would fill out a form to the department saying, hey, there's an abandoned vehicle.
Correct,
But that's the same process you do after you've towed it.
correct.
what's this last part of the sentence where it says, unless the vehicle has been removed from the property? If it's removed from the property, then what is, it's not there? Like,
Basically, the statute's saying that as the landowner, it's on your property. It's not on your property. Of course, it's coming out, I feel horrible saying that. But
Yeah,
if it's not there. it's
Maybe
not
that
there.
needs to be clarified. Anthea's probably listening, so
You said she was gonna listen to.
maybe
does,
we.
yeah, does it make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Because to me, the landowner, I was thinking is where the abandoned vehicle was before being,
I think what this makes sense to me is I live next door to my cousin Rob's auto shop, and he used to be a junkyard, lots of abandoned cars, and so people bring cars that need lots of work, and if that builds way too much, it'll just sit there while they're figuring things out. So I'm thinking of the landowner as maybe not where the car was abandoned, but where that car is residing. And if somebody comes to my cousin Rob's shop, can't pay $3,000 for a new whatever, then Rob can go through this process after a certain amount of time, unless that guy comes out in the middle of the night, tows it and gets it off the property, and then Rob's claim to that can go away. So I mean, that to me is why I think the language makes sense, but.
Oh, they're like that, so your cousin could say, hey, that car was abandoned, but even though it's not on his property, he can't make the claim that's now in the Cavalier's now in Tom Chittenden driveway. So,
Gotcha.
Roll it over. I don't know.
yeah, maybe.
I guess I was thinking more of, like, as you're talking about a backfield on a farm or something, or, where you discover that somebody deposited, because it's amazing the kind of stuff that gets left. You can find microwaves on your property and so forth. So the question becomes one of, if you, in the spring, you go out and discover that you've got an abandoned vehicle on your, your back field, you might not even be aware of it within that 90
Yeah,
days.
so I was what happens after 90 days? Because when I was in the select board, we have an ordinance, you can't leave the vehicle, what you get hit with in your own yard. So, but then they said, it's not my vehicle, I didn't leave it there. Like somebody else left it there. But so we would say you have to do this, so, but if it's after 90 days, what happens? You can't
Yeah, I
file
guess
for it.
So, a couple things. So your scenario is what's called an artisan's lien, meaning that I brought it to you, asked you to do work and it failed to pay. So just ran into a situation where that happened to somebody, the vehicle's left there for 15 years, still not abandoned, it's still an artisan's lien. But the liens are, I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, possessory, meaning if you don't possess it, you don't have a lien. So in the situation of a garage, if you let the car go, you have no lien anymore. In the situation of abandoned, if you don't have the car there, it's not yours, it's not abandoned, it's not on your property.
Even if the work hasn't been done, because, they don't want to pay the 3,000, Rob didn't do the work, it's just sitting there, it's a car that's not moving.
Correct, and then there's a process in the statute for them to get ownership and be able to sell that vehicle at public auction.
Or could have small claims.
That's different than abandoned.
That's a mechanic's lien, right?
Correct. Yes.
Again, no money's owed, just the person doesn't know what to do with the car. Don't care about it, Rob didn't do the work, this wouldn't qualify.
That's a tricky situation, you probably want to get lawyers involved in that one. So. Right, 'cause I mean, at the end of the day.
There might be one that's on retainer.
Here's
Oh, boy,
here's my card, right?
So we're back to the language of this bill. Is this something you agree to this language? This
For
bill?
90 days.
The 90 days, yes.
Okay, so is there any part of the language in here that you folks have an issue with? Is the, what's the issue? Which one?
So can I?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
If I could, if you look at it's the one that's amending 2153. Right now, the certification has to be done by a law enforcement officer. They are sprayed out, understaffed. And so what we're proposing to add is a newer used automobile dealer or licensed inspection station. I wrote it at the bottom, it's in my handwriting. And here's the analysis. Auto dealers are agents of the state. They're licensed and they become agents of the state, as are inspection stations. They're strictly supervised and regulated by DMV. And there are, by broadening the field of individuals who can certify that the vehicle you know, the VIN number, it expands, it makes it less onerous on these folks. Is that a fair summary of that?
So on, yes, and so on top of filing for abandonment, we have to have a VIN verification done. Currently, as it's written, it has to be done by a law enforcement officer. Vermont State Police in our area, Caledonia and Orleans County. Orleans County is running, I think, most of the time with 2 or 3 officers. Caledonia is not far behind them. They don't have time to come up and look at 10 vehicle VIN numbers. So you can contact the sheriff's department, and in Caledonia County, they charge for VIN verification. So now we've towed it, we've waited with it, we filed for abandonment, we've paid to have a VIN verification, we mailed all this paperwork to the state. We wait, they have 30 days to respond to DMV's letter, then they have another 30 days to get us the title. So 60, 90 days, we're waiting for the process to complete, and then we bring it up to the scrapyard for $75 maybe, and we don't even get our $40. So if we could eliminate the VIN verification part to having a certified agent of the state, you know, inspection stations have been deemed the agent of the state. New and used automobile dealers are agents of the state, or an officer.
And that's not, and that's not, of course, it's not about ownership, but that isn't somewhat different than what we've done in the past. When I was in the car business, we used to do, for motor vehicles, we used to do dealer appraisals or dealer or whatever on private sales. And I mean, we're putting a value on a vehicle to help out with that process. So I don't think that is too far-fetched of something that could be done, as long as you guys agree.
So you're not, in this case, we would still have certification of the VIN, but we're opening up the number of authorized entities to do that certification.
Exactly.
And this is, New Hampshire does it this way with a licensed motor vehicle dealer or inspection station or officer. It has to be one of the 3.
I don't want to lose this, but I'm assuming that Thea's listening. I just don't, so how do we make sure that this gets done?
Well, we'll give her this proposed language.
Well, she has, because she's done that. She was waiting for us to,
She has this as well.
she does. She's the one that sent this out back to us. And she actually has some comments on there that would be helpful.
So we could have, at the end, go over this.
I'd like to get the language all together, we agree on, so we can move this thing.
Surprisingly, at the thought some of Vince's writing was confusing to understand.
Oh, that's not hard. Vince used to draft legislation in my earlier days with him, and none of us knew what it was.
But he assured you it was okay.
He got it passed. I was reporting the Capitol bill one day on the Senate floor that we had reviewed the day before, and I was reporting it, and I said, I don't remember this happening. And Vince said, give me another copy, and overnight he had changed it.
You just said you'd got out the coffee when they were doing it.
So I reported on something I didn't really think about, but it passed. Vince was a beneficiary.
That's good.
Because he was a better draft person. You know, he used to draft at night. He could draft. He's the only person I knew of that could draft. Talk to a constituent or someone from the committee. He could draft something and write legislation all the same time. You know,
Pass it to the next.
And then he was on the phone.
yeah. Anyway, that's, you know.
He went on the phone, but I think that's how he did this upstairs in the couch.
You're right, you're right.
Things haven't changed.
But he is accurate, I will say that. Sure, so what do we gotta do to do all this? We wanna help you, I think, consensus here.
Well, we wanted to last year, but he just got held up. He was a victim of,
Right.
victim of politics. And we had all agreed to,
Well, I guess, yeah, I see 3 things. First of all, raising the 40 to 125.
Yeah, that's,
Increasing the 30 to 90 days. And then expanding the number of entities that can be, to do the certification of the VIN. And, let's see, was there,
did you have another, Bob?
Yeah, also changing the definition of
and
a motor vehicle. So what we're running into right now is,
the other thing we wanted to do was consider changing the language that the towing was at the request of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Make it
Yes.
clear. Those, I think, are the family who's listening, I think we're the 4 so far. You got one more thing?
Yeah, one more was the definition also to include, so ATVs and snowmobiles are now allowed on Vermont roads in most areas. So towers are getting stuck with ATVs that may have been in an accident and towed, or were pulled over on the road for no registration and being towed, or snowmobiles. We had one tower who, someone was towing a boat down the interstate, and the trailer broke in half, and they left the trailer and the boat on the side of the road. So they tried to file for abandonment for it. Well, technically, boats, ATVs, snowmobiles, I'm sure there's other things, equipment, are not eligible for abandonment because
Homemade trailers.
right, because they're not written into the law. However, Vermont is taxing people on snowmobiles and ATVs and boats. They're registering them, they're titling them. So they're doing everything a car is doing. They're
Well,
just
but that gets to the top of page 35. Motor vehicle means all vehicles propelled or drawn by power,
right.
other than muscular power.
So like an Amish carriage, right?
So that language would address,
That, right,
that's in our draft bill.
correct. So that was the other one.
Although the other ones were not, changing to law enforcement. In other words, the tow is at the
The ones
request.
we don't think are in the bill are the ones that we passed out this morning. And maybe you could talk about the page issue number 1 on the amendment.
So one issue we're having is a lien law on vehicles, or one of the issues. Is there any way you could read this? And I'll explain it. I can't.
Yeah, why don't you,
The owner of,
so I can read it. The owner of any motor vehicle seeking possession of the vehicle, contents, or cargo shall issue a surety bond in an amount equal to towing, recovery, remediation, and related fees and costs claimed by the towing and recovery business in possession of the motor vehicle contents and cargo. And
Does that get us out of the jurisdiction of this committee, posting bonds?
well, I'll tell you how I met Bob with his permission. I don't remember the details of the case, it was probably 10 years ago. But this is a typical scenario with commercial carriers. You have Lloyd's of London, which, as some of you who work in the insurance world know, Lloyd's of London is kind of an amalgamator of insurance companies from all over the world. We have a number of trucking companies in Vermont that include trucks from Mexico and Canada. So what happens is he gets called to and this applies mostly to commercial crashes. He'll get called to a crash scene. This is the case I handled. The insurance company was Lloyd's of London, or they're seldom in state. The trucking company was from somewhere not in Vermont. And so we had a situation where they called him and said, we want the truck, and I don't know about the
the
content.
truck, trailer, and cargo was lumber.
Right. We want it back. And under Vermont law, you have no authority to hold it. So he's got a bill for,
So I think it was $16,000.
yeah, and he had no ability to hold the collateral or payment. Whereas if I had sewed a shirt for you, I could hold the shirt until you pay me. That's the, what's it called, the
Artisans.
artisan's lien. So what we've proposed here is that in that type of scenario, you simply request the commercial carrier to post a bond so you can have your truck and equipment and cargo back, but leave these folks something against which they can claim in the event they successfully prevail in a court case to recover for their damages. And with commercial, it's not a hook on the back bumper. Oftentimes it's hazardous chemicals. It's remediation of the site, So they have to hire subcontractors, traffic control.
Would the towing company do the remediation?
Yes.
They're all called towing and recovery companies. And DMV and the folks expect them to clean up because that's my last amendment regarding hazardous spills. So they go out with a rotator truck, which is what, $750,000?
Was, now it's 900.
Okay, well, it was back when I was representing them. So, and then they go out with a sort of a 24-foot trailer full of hazardous mitigation equipment. And it's not unusual for the bill to go sometimes into the, 70, 80, 90.
You could easily have.
There was a case in Island Pond, I think he was involved, but it did result in I think it was a Canadian trucking company carrying hydrogen peroxide.
Concentrate.
Not the kind you buy at the store to disinfect, but it was literally boiling up out of the ground. And they had to hire the professional staff to remediate that spill. And of course, they add it to their charge. And so the bill gets tabulated, in a week or two. Meanwhile, the cargo, the trailer, and everything else is gone. So in that case, the cargo is not recoverable, but the equipment against which they could hold some security for the purpose of getting paid at some future date was gone with the taken to Canada. So we're trying to come up with a scenario where, and this is not, Vermont is somewhat behind the times in this regard. We're trying to come up with a scenario whereby these folks have some security.
So this is patterned after other states'
Other
laws?
states, yes. And not, so all these businesses now, if you read the fine print, I never would have unless I knew him. They're called towing and recovery operations. And it's big money and they're left holding the bag, and you take 2 or 3 of these a year and it could be, financial ruin. In fact, the former president went out of business, the former president of the Vermont Towing Association.
Just for the record, Anthea is listening and she's doing the corrections and changes. So whatever we agree on today, we'll have the final draft which we can all look at. So at this point, this is good to consider, but Mike, you're listening and you can, I want everybody to agree or disagree here today so we can get this resolved.
So that was the language on page 1, and then the definition section. Those of you familiar with Title IV, you know that the definition section is long and it's not alphabetical. I couldn't find a definition for towing business. So I came up with a definition that I think we borrowed from New Hampshire. And so that's the other change we request. That's identified as issue number 1 on our list. Issue number 2, where I put lower the number of hours from 48. We didn't know what number to throw in there. I've been on these committees before where, what's grand larceny? Some folks wanted it down to 500, some, because it makes it a felony level. So we compromised on 900, no rhyme or reason. We thought we'd leave it up to you folks to discuss as to lowering the number of hours that a vehicle has to be, on a road or private property.
Ideally, I think
I thought what we agreed to was not get rid of the time and just say the towing is at the request of law
Okay.
enforcement.
That's fine.
So it could be
Okay,
10 hours.
Could be 2 hours.
Okay.
But it could be because of the location of the safety or whatever. So normally, I think probably if it's not at risk, they just tag it
sure.
and you wouldn't tow it immediately. But I thought we dealt with that,
Fine.
dealing with a specified hour by instead use a different trigger methodology.
Okay.
What about the language with the landowners and stuff like that? Because we talked about it, there was 3 different interpretations of
Yeah.
how that had, did we come to consensus on what we would do with that language?
That's a different section.
Yeah.
Because I hear Thea talking about it.
Yeah, we were struggling with what landowner meant within that
Right.
context, whether it's a farmer who discovers it in a backfield
Maybe she could come up with some.
Yeah, maybe,
And then-
versus the
then we can
storage.
do what she says.
Right,
at the
right.
company.
So I just wanted to,
Yeah, that's good.
I wanted to put that to Thea's attention.
I'm thankful she's listening. She can do these changes and get some clarification so we all can I think we're all on the same page so far, it's just that we have to put in language that is acceptable to everybody.
And the last issue, I know you're running out of time, is on page, I've got it identified as issue number 3. This is the hazardous.
Was your salary in your business?
Not yet.
Read the small print, okay?
Okay.
Read the small print.
Page 4.
Page 4, 5, and 6.
Materialize after it's on the film. Anyway, issue 3. So here, this is the authority, this is insurance companies. They say Vermont law does not allow a towing business to recover when they are called to a scene which requires the recovery from a hazardous substance spill, if that's the right word. And so as you can see, when the law was written, it was written for municipalities, fire districts, EMS, and so on. But nowadays, these folks have taken on that responsibility. You know, if you call the Orleans Fire Department, they don't have the equipment that he does to do the recovery of hazardous materials. And so the fire department gets paid, but they don't. And so we're trying to expand it to include towing business.
Are there, what's the status of this fund and
So-
the money there to pay?
No, this isn't for the state fund. This is for, if you get paid for it, it goes into the state fund, not your guys' end. So what we're running into is a car that does not have full coverage insurance and liability insurance only, right? So a car was in an accident and the gas tank ruptured and it went into the drainage ditch with the water on the side of the road. Towers would clean up the gas or oil spill, or whatever it may be, or if a car went into a river, it would clean it up. And at least be able to pay for the cleanup portion and the recovery. So we have to at least get that car out of the river back to the roadway to stop polluting the hazard, the area.
But isn't it broader than that? Than a
Yeah,
vehicle?
India says,
It could be a tractor trailer truck with, so.
Hydrogen peroxide.
Right, so if we change this, I'm just wondering, does this fund, how much money is in it and whether it's even got the capacity to underwrite reimbursement for these expenses?
It was a fund, with you, Mike, the funds. with you.
No, I don't think so.
India says on this issue 3 that this proposal has been made before in this area and has not historically been something that Senate Transportation has jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
Well, the goal
We
is.
don't want this to go to too many committees.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to keep it in this committee.
Well, the bonding deals with it to some extent.
Right.
To be able
Right.
to require the bonding.
Right.
So that you can hold on to the
Vehicle.
vehicle. So that's maybe more than one way to skin the cat. This would be the default, but then that gets us.
My point is that
Amortization.
is if we can, maybe address some of this. If this has to go to another committee, as Senator Mazza said, it's gonna probably get tore apart even more. So if we could keep it to the scope of what we could get done today to agree to, that maybe we might be a little bit better to do that.
To get rid of issue 3.
Well, just to get you guys four-fifths of what you're looking for versus none of what you're looking
Into that, the
for.
resources would be there. you
We
know.
really don't wanna get it to where we don't get something passed for you guys this year, because last year you guys got held up in politics. And we don't want 2 years in a row with that.
We'll be grateful with whatever we can get.
I'll take page 3 back.
All right. Well,
So,
bonding is something, I suppose, we require other bonding, other areas of transportation.
Yeah, for dealer licensing for motor vehicles, you have to have a bond.
Bonding probably is within it doesn't raise the same jurisdictional issue as once you get into
Well,
the.
Ed
hazardous
Theo
waste.
will probably tell us that, or John will probably know that.
So just so you know, the version that I gave Russ a couple of weeks ago, we have slightly revised it. So your drafts person should probably look at this document that we're discussing today.
Okay.
I will take care of that.
Thank you. But anyway, yeah, if you folks think 3 is beyond your scope, certainly pull it because we don't want it going.
Well,
across the
and
whole
maybe
line.
it is or maybe it isn't, Vince, but if,
We'll
But
run
if
it
we
by.
did the bonding route to give
Right.
that kind of assurance, we really provided some
Let's forget it.
progress.
Yeah. Okay.
I get free back.
But when you start making commitments out of hazardous waste fund,
Right.
I think that,
Just to get a
So
little.
I think Bob's saying that the towers could be happy without
Get the
3 for
bonding.
right now, and then we can address that later. Is that correct, Bob?
We don't want to be called at 3 o'clock in the morning for $40. Take my truck out.
Even $120.
Jesus, in today's world, oh my God.
Okay.
no, but with some of the materials and the loads, when we're talking about commercial vehicles, that is a pretty significant expenditure. So the bonding part does reasonable protection.
Right, it's protection for both of us.
Where's your business? Where?
Orleans and Lindenville in Littleton, New Hampshire.
And yours? Where?
Swanton, Vermont, St. Albans, Vermont, and we cover New York State, upstate New York too.
Some of the
Wow.
big tow trucks.
There's some abandoned Corvettes in Colchester. Can you go there?
What is your new tow truck? What?
So we have rotators, I think there's 7 in the state now, and they're about anywhere from 8 to 950,000.
Does Roland have one too?
Who?
Roland?
Rollins.
Roland?
No, he's got a flatbed. I don't think he has anything.
What's a
trucks.
rotator? Rotator's got.
It's like it's a crane. It has,
Oh, okay, yeah, you can-
you can pick stuff up and rotate with it and turn around and, you know, it allows you to keep one lane of traffic open. Historically, a tow truck, you always pull off the back, so you have to block the interstate. Well, now you can sit in one lane, keep one lane of the interstate open and turn the
Ever watch the
turn the
Weather
boom.
Channel Highways from Hell?
highway through hell.
Or something?
You ever go to a river or something, get a car out?
Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta get in the water?
We did an airplane.
You did an airplane. I remember you did an airplane.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, because you just think the car's on the side of the road, but you gotta go over the banks, the rivers.
And that's just it. I mean, historically, towers have always been thought of as picking up,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
cars
yeah,
on the
yeah.
side of the
Right.
road and, you know, the beer bellies hanging out. And I think times have changed and, you know.
Wait, drink light beer?
Yeah.
A tractor
True.
trailer, when I see a tractor trailer turned over, that takes a lot of.
It does.
To bring one of those back up.
It does. And these trucks that are $900,000, I mean, that's a $10,000 a month payment that's sitting there for maybe 1 call a month or every 3 months. So but you need to have it in order to
Be on rotation.
Be on rotation.
and to do-
When you go to a tractor trailer that's turned over, that's gonna run $10,000. Are you sure you're gonna get paid?
No.
That's why they want to be.
So this is
bonded.
what we're running into right
No,
now
that's what I'm
is,
saying, because you could spend $10,000 service call and get nothing or whatever.
well, we've got more than that. A lot, what we're running into is a lot of people from, you know, other states like New
Right,
Jersey and
Right.
Florida, Texas, you know, they're coming up here. They have no insurance on their trucks.
Not even liability.
Not even liability insurance. You
Yeah.
can get a $2,500 insurance policy. They issue a certificate of insurance. Now these guys are good to go on the road. Technically, by federal law, they're supposed to have an MC 190 filing, which covers up to $1 million of environmental damage. But you don't ever really know if they have that. And it's more of the out-of-state trucks. Vermonters are pretty good with their situation, but so you get this truck that comes up, it costs you $30,000, costs me $30,000 to clean it up. By the
Right.
time I hire traffic control, because state police
Right,
is
right.
understaffed, so they don't have the staff.
And
to
the
do
truck
it.
is not worth anything.
And the truck's worth nothing, and I got a load of oranges. I mean, I can only eat so many oranges. You know?
I see the other day there was a load of 38,000 pounds of French fries somewhere, frozen French fries in a trailer, the top come off the truck. And they hit a bridge or something. Jesus, 38.
We did bottle caps, tractor trailer full of bottle caps, and you gotta pick every one of them up.
Oh my God, is that something?
Yeah,
Jeez.
500,000 bottle caps.
Gee. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're gonna do our best to get something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ingles, for bringing this.
Yes.
No problem.